and our next talk by Arihant, which is under the hood talk, metaprogramming with Ruby. Arihant, over to you.
Mic testing? Yeah, it's working fine. So thanks, Gautam, for your kind words and the introduction. And I hope you all are energized. We had good taste of dance, music, food, everything we had. So the next 25 minutes, I request your attention. So, hello people. My name is Arihant Hirawat, and I work as a software engineer at Infraspec. At Infraspec, we are into backend and SRE consulting. On my day-to-day work, business has requirements, business breaks sometimes, and I write code to solve that, right? Don't consider me boring. I have recently taken up swimming so that I can get scuba certification. Just wanted to know how many of you are into swimming or trekking, anything. Please raise your hand. Anyone into swimming? Oh, let's connect after. I need some recommendation. I lack stamina in swimming. So before I start with my topic, whatever it is, I need to discuss why I am here and why I want to share this topic with you. So few months back, I was onboarded into a new project. That was quite a big deal for me. It involved a lot of code that was into a logistic domain. It had all sort of merchants, courier, and tons of classes and methods. Like regular classes and regular methods are fine because we deal with it every day. What actually threw me up was some floating methods. There were some methods in the system. When I tried all the keyboard shortcuts I knew of, I could not find which class it belongs to. So how many of you write code in Ruby or Ruby on Rails? Have you faced this issue where you have methods which Rails or Ruby supports, but you don't know which class it belongs to? Have you any time faced? So that was the issue, and I find this code base was a real challenge for me. So that's why the talk of the day is diving into the dynamics, demystifying metaprogramming with Ruby. The word metaprogramming may seem like it's something futuristic, but it is nothing. It's a very simple concept. Give me your next 20 minutes and I will explain it to you. So let's start. Since I have requested your time, you should know that, right? What topics I'm going to cover. So I will start by explaining what is metaprogramming and go through a lot of code examples so we can see next time how we can use it to implement. Then everything comes with its trade-offs, drawbacks, and we will discuss that, and we will see what is the best practice to use it. If you take my words for now, never use metaprogramming, but we are still going to use it. So, what is metaprogramming? Definition seems boring, right? I will not start with the definition. Let's start with a simple class. Here, just random sitting in a day, I want to create a class, talking toy. So whenever on this class, you call functions like sing, read, write, it can say, I can sing, I can read, I can write. But as I start implementing, I see all the methods are similar. They follow similar pattern. So what I want is, I want to have a magical method. So I can just pass the name and it prints out that. So this is what I wanted to perform. I do not want to write repeated code. So we have some magical code over there. You feed in all the methods which you want, and it creates it for you. And how it become possible is the magic behind metaprogramming, right? So if we have to define what metaprogramming means, it's a technique that allows developer to write code which generates further code and modifies the behavior of existing code at runtime. So how many of you in your code base deals with metaprogramming? And how do you find it? Like, first time when you encountered, anyone want to say, was it confusing for you? Yeah, so I can understand everyone's situation. I was there a few months back, right? Yeah. So this is what metaprogramming means. And if you have to go to history, it is not something like it came in 2023 or 2020, right? Early days of programming where we had assembly language. I think in college we had a subject system software in that we had to write some programs. And if you remember, we had macros. If in a code we have something repetitive, we put it in macro and call that macros every time, right? That was not sophisticated as we have in modern programming languages. So that was where we can trace metaprogramming started from. Then languages like C++ or Lisp, they introduce some advanced form of metaprogramming. Then if you are from Java background, there are something called reflections, which is like a metaprogramming. Then we had Ruby. It became popular due to its expressiveness, right? That's why we love Ruby. So that's the history of metaprogramming. So what's unique about it in Ruby? Since we are at RubyConf, we need to discuss about it in Ruby, right? So the dynamic nature and the strong reflection capabilities in Ruby allows a program to evaluate and modify at runtime. And open classes and monkey patching. What it means is, you have string class, you have array classes, you have predefined functionalities, methods in that classes. You can open it anytime and override the functionality. That's what I mean by open classes and monkey patching. Then it provides flexibility and creativity. It allows developers to come up with innovative solutions, which might be not possible or feasible in other languages, which Ruby provides us. So enough of the theory. I know you are developers, you want to see more of the code, so let's move into that. So after RubyConf in the weekend, Monday you go to office, your boss comes up with the requirements. Boss is there, he will come up with requirements. So this is his new requirement. We need a system that flags expenses greater than $99 for computer parts. So this is just he came like he needs something and he said this. Then in the next few times, boss has a good context of the system, right? So he says, you already have a data source in the system which has these methods. If you call CPU info, mouse info, keyboard price, it will return you the information. Boss is technically smart as well as knows how to make people work. So he says you have this data source in place and it will give the information. What I want is you create a wrapper around this and flag the expenses which are greater than 99. So as a developer, I started my work 9:30, 10. I started writing this class. I wrote the mouse method, CPU method, keyboard method. And if you see what it does is, from the data source, it's called this method, right? But after some time I think this pattern I'm repeating. But I know metaprogramming, right? I should use that spell to make it more better, right? This code is repetitive. If there are 100 components of a computer, I need to write method for each, and which I do not want. So before I start writing code in metaprogramming, right, I need to revise all the concepts which are there in metaprogramming. So we will see what are them. So the first and the most important is send. Whenever you have class, you have methods. You can call those methods in two ways. One is that job instance dot method name, and another is send. And how send is different from that, we will see. So just let's understand it again with an example. You have a process item. If action is sell, call item.sell. If it's refund, call refund on the item. This is the usual way which everyone we use, right? And how send makes it more good is, you check if the item respond to that particular action. If yes, you can call item.send that particular action. So with send, you can wait till runtime to decide the name of your method. In this case, the action is calculated at runtime, not like in case of this, if you see line number 3, 6, 3, 7, and 9, we have defined sell, refund, void, return. But with send, this is one useful thing, but you need to understand send is that powerful, you can even call private methods of a class. And you might be thinking, if I can call powerful method, it breaks encapsulation. But there is a thing like, you as a developer, Ruby provides you with send method. It's your responsibility if you want to use send or not. If you use send, you will break encapsulation, which we as good developers never do. So what's the alternative of it? Anyone knows what is the alternative of it? Public send, right. Our community is smart. So we have public send. So with public send, you cannot call private methods of a class. And so every time we use any example, we will try to use public send. If you find me using send, you can catch me up anytime and whatever. Okay. So dynamic dispatch was one, and second we have is define method. So metaprogramming is all about dynamic, creating something on the fly. So this define method, create methods on the fly. Without example, we cannot understand. Let's see. So this was the class which I need to refactor. So how we can go ahead doing is, if you see this computer class, I have a define method which takes an argument called name. So it like data source.public send, on the data source it will call the method get whatever CPU, keyboard, mouse, whatever it is. And in line number 17, 18, 19, you see I am calling define component. So when I call them, it will create 3 methods, mouse, CPU, and keyboard for that class. And if you want to take it to another level, what we can do is we can, if you see in line number 5, on data source, we get all the methods, and we call define component for that. So if your data source contains 100 functions or maybe 1,000, don't know. So with this simple piece of template, it will generate all the methods for you. So this is what the define method does. It creates methods at runtime. So there are various ways of solving a problem. So the one way which we did was using define method. And there is something else approach which we could take to solve the same. And before going through that, we need to understand how method lookup works and in Ruby. So you have a class and you have a subclass. You create an object of subclass, and on object you called my method. So how method lookup works is, first object will look that method in its class. If it is not found, it will look into superclass. If it is not even found there, it will call object. If the method is not found anywhere, it will call a method called method missing. If you have seen when you call some method which is not found, we get no method error, right? That is method missing, which returns us that. So we can use that to create methods at runtime. Let's see. So let's see about method missing. So the same class, we are using another approach to solve it. So here if you see, I have overridden method missing. That takes the name of the method, and we call super. If data source does not respond to that method, what it will do is, if our data source does not support that method, it will call no method found. And rest code remains same. Info, price, it gets from the data source. And if the price is greater than or equal to 100, it marks it with a star flag. So that's how we utilize method missing to solve. So yeah, and if you look at this, on my computer, if I call it respond to CPU, what will it print? Will it be a true or false? Anyone? False? True? False. Yeah. It will return false because with method missing, what we have is we do not, the class does not know whether the CPU keyboard method is there or not. If it does not find, it call method missing, and in method missing, we call that. So there is a contract. If you are using method missing every time, we need to override respond to missing. So what does respond to missing do? It will check if data source contain this method, return true, otherwise call super. Super every time return false. So every time you make use of method missing, make sure to override respond to missing so that they are aware of your runtime methods. So the next we have is open classes and monkey patching. What open classes and monkey patching means is you can open any existing Ruby or Rails class and override the whole functionality of it. So if you have seen sometime, if you try this string.camelize, in Ruby it will not work. But if you do in Rails, it converts that camelize. And how it works is, in Rails, active support gem is included by default. And that overrides the string class. that opens string class and add a method called camelize and the implementation details. So here what drawback I see, string class comes with a public contract. It says that we have this is our definition, these are the list of methods we have. But what we did here is, we have broken that contract and we have added some other methods. So what could be the drawback is, so let's see. So we have defined a replace method. So it has an array, original, and the replacement element. So it will replace original with the replacement element. So what I think, this replace should be a part of array class. So I will open the array class and add the method there. And after some time, other developers starts to complain that their code starts breaking. And the reason for it, the original array class has already a method replace that behaves differently than what our implementation is doing. So this is one drawback. And in this case, you will never, if you do not have unit test, you will never be able to find that your change has caused an issue. So this is one dark side of open classes. Yeah, if you find methods of the array, there is a replace, which is the default method, and we have overridden that. So that's why there was a break in functionality. So how metaprogramming is used in Ruby community? We will see one example. Suppose you have a user model, right? And that has attribute like user or email. If you see in the user model, we have not defined any methods like find by email, find by name or anything, but Rails by default providers. And how that is possible is through the metaprogramming. Despite how useful metaprogramming is, it is not without its drawback. Like everything comes up with a trade-off. So if you look at this method, it will take some brain cycles to process. Maybe the code is obvious, but it takes some brain cycles to process what this code is. And any new developer looking at the code base can easily get confused. So to avoid this, what we can do is, the first is clearly documenting your metaprogramming code and using descriptive names. Since the code example here is simple, if it is something related with finance domain or anything, it would have very difficult for the new developers to understand. And the another thing is writing unit test. So unit test will act as a documentation for your metaprogramming code, and at the same time, it will catch any unintended behavior. So these are few things which we can use to avoid the confusion. And references is the metaprogramming Ruby edition by that author and some log from AppSignal. And always remember to use public send because we never use send. It breaks encapsulation. So that's it.
All right, questions or trick questions for him, because it's metaprogramming talk. What's with the thanks bang? What will that do? Is it supposed to mutate? Is it supposed to return a copy?
Thanks.
Thanks bang.
It will raise exception if you don't respond.
Oh, okay. No, not for exceptions. You want to handle that for exceptions?
No.
Or for mutation? Questions?
Yeah, one question.
Yes, sir.
Not a question per se, but what we could do is alias public send as send bang, because it does throw a no method error, right? So that we could do that to.
Sorry, could you please repeat your question? I did not.
Yeah, so it's not a question. I'm just saying we could alias the send public send method as send bang, right? That would be more expressive because it does send a no method error for private methods.
So instead of using public send,
okay,
use send bang, and it will be more readable.
Yeah,
is what his comment is. You might want to put that as a issue or GitHub comment in Ruby community and probably expect a response maybe 2 years from now. I'm sorry. No, the community is pretty responsive for this, but public send was probably to ensure that you are explicitly saying public send and not making a mistake. I wanted to write send bang and I forgot to put the exclamation mark. Questions?
Anyone?
You can dynamically generate your questions on the fly with the method missing and define method. All right, our metaprogramming taught. There we go. We always have questions. You want to now introduce yourself because you are our lone survivor for questions.
Yeah, I'm Subin. I'm a software engineer at Big Binary. So my question is that I see in Rails source code, there's a lot of metaprogramming methods and everything is defined. So how, is there any performance impact when there's too much, like even in the Rails source code, there's too much metaprogramming is involved?
Very good question. The thing is, when something is dynamically generated, right? For that code itself, there are people who says anything which is dynamic causes memory or performance issue. So why they may be saying is, that code is there. To store that particular code, you create extra objects, right? And that uses more memory. And to be honest, I have not gone through that, and I'm not aware of like any performance issue or anything which it causes. So like if anyone has faced this performance issue or anything, could someone please answer this question? Like if anyone has came through this.
That is called invoking method missing define method. Please answer question.
Yeah.
So the offer is still open.
Yeah. Anyone wants to clear his
Actually,
doubt?
I'll clear it. So in Rails, even if you use ATTR, writer, reader, attribute, reader, writer, they are all dynamic methods. And they are all generated while you are defining the class. So if you put that, it automatically goes defines the class. So there is very rarely you are ever going to implement code to define a method dynamically. And if you ever end up doing that, you could actually end up corrupting a lot of memory. So it is never recommended. Okay, so don't do that.
Thanks.
Hence answered. Question. Are you going to answer? Is it a question or an answer?
Okay.
Oh, okay. She's a question. One sec, hold on.
I have my support system with me. If I do not answer, he will definitely.
Hang on, where's the mic? Do you have a mic there somewhere? Yeah, it's coming up. That is called
Hello.
delegation.
Yeah, I'm Krisha Agarwal, and I'm actually an undergraduate student. So this was a new concept for me, but the main question I have is, functions are made to like eliminate repetition, right? And you said that whatever code that the metaprogramming will generate, it will be like, if you have a function which follows the same template again and again, it will generate that.
Okay.
But why do I need that when I can create a general function which can, take inputs for the specific type, like CPU, keyboard, mouse? Like, why do I need to create a dynamic program?
So in Rails, we do have attributes, right? Are you aware of it?
I'm
sorry.
new to Rails.
You got to explain it from the start. Go for it. And I have 2 minutes to play, so.
I am not
Undefined
able
method.
to process anything. Like please. I can explain, but I'm not able to like process anything or say like, give me 10 minutes, I will definitely explain this to
You have 1 minute and 43 seconds.
I will explain it.
All right, I'll try and answer your question. It's a very cool idea. So Ruby as a language is meant to have ease of use. So if I have to define a method, say for example, CPU. So if I want to get the type of CPU, how will I actually do it? 2-3 ways. Either I define a class CPU, then define methods on CPU like CPU type, frequency, everything. Or I just want to define something which tells me the name of the CPU. So I use CPU as an attribute or an object. Now here's the crazy part of Ruby. Everything is an object. The integer 1, that is also an object. Okay, it has actually 42, 45 methods on it. So even when you say the symbol CPU, that is the colon CPU, that it's also an object. And on that you can query methods. So you can call methods on that. So you don't actually have to define the conventional way of programming where you have a method, explain, and pass a parameter. Because if you pass a parameter in Ruby, because there is no type, it is impossible for you to find out what do you want to explain. So instead, you use these kind of methods, which says, say, attribute reader, CPU, which will automatically generate code to read what's written in the CPU variable. And that's how it becomes easy for us to code in Ruby, but the underlying structures are super complicated, which we never see. It's a feature of the language itself. Fair enough?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, so code which writes code. So it generates code and puts it, but we don't see it. It's generated after in the interpreter itself.
I understood that part, but I still don't get, like, if it's repeating, why? Yes.
Reuse. So it's called don't repeat yourself is the concept in Ruby. So if you want to write code which is going to give you information about a reader, use a common standard template to define it back.
I get a minute to answer that. Maybe
Time's up, but I'll give you a minute.
Thanks. So because she's a student, maybe she knows Java, right? Yeah. So in Java, right, whenever you do something, you basically create an object and apply some methods on it, right, in order to work. Here in metaprogramming, we are talking about a concept wherein we don't have anything, but we know what it should do, right? So for example, a thing that is not defined yet, but it might have a price. A thing that is not defined yet, but it might have a feature, right? And I want to ensure that in future, whatever else comes in, this should act. So basically, it is a meta thing, right? The object doesn't exist. In Java, how would you do? Is basically use a strategy pattern, create an object, create a hierarchy of objects, and try to. You can do that here as well, right? But metaprogramming is much elegant way of doing that without providing patches, right?
Thank you.
And my last question to you, what is your name?
Krisha.
Krisha, and you're an undergraduate student, okay? So I'm telling you, it is not easy to come to a conference and ask a question with this amount of clarity to an audience which is this, and not get a direct, straightforward answer. So very proud of you for asking that question. Please, excellent.
Thank you.
So thanks for being a lovely audience, and thanks Gautam for being my support system. Anything for you.
All right, thanks Arihant.